Welcome to the Dalen Show. Welcome to episode number 4 of Cardinals Talk. I'm Dalen Flowers. He's Russ Eddings, and here are today's topics. After sweeping the Cleveland Guardians, St. Louis Cardinals dropped 3 straight games to the Pittsburgh Pirates after going scoreless in each games. Is it time for Erick, Fedde, and Mikolas to be shot for the Cardinals? Is it time to move on from the 2 veteran pitchers? And as we move forward to getting ready to go to Chicago and facing the Cubs in Wrigley, what do the Cardinals need to do to get back on track? Russ, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Can't complain, man. Ugly series against Pittsburgh. I think so much to talk about, man. But going scoreless, 3 straight games against a team that's bottom of the division, scoreless, and now I think 28 innings. It builds so much to ask for, and you know it's something that we've actually kind of talked about in a kind of collective manner over the couple episodes that we've been doing this. And it's funny how we can sweep Cleveland and then not score a single run against Pittsburgh. What did you take away from the Pirates series? What were some of your takeaways? What do you think needs to be done now in order to have some type of fighting chance to stay competitive in the division? Now, it's crazy that we were 2.5 games back going into the start of the Pittsburgh series, and now with the chance going to Wrigley, we could be like, more than 5 games back. So what's your thoughts and kind of just take so far?
Well, my hope is that they just kind of ran into a buzzsaw. Honestly, Pirates. This is probably the best ball they're going to play all season. Just swept the Mets. Caught what you want with the Mets. They're on the down right now, but I think they just sort of clicked this week, and it's hard to not be pessimistic when you get swept by the Pirates and you lose, I think, combined 13-0. But they beat the Mets like 32-4 too. So they're just kind of on a roll right now. I think Brendan Donovan said you just gotta shrug it off, which is kind of what you got to do right now. You face a much better opponent. They're looking at 27 plus. I don't know when the last inning they scored in the Guardians series was, but you're creeping up on, if you haven't already passed that 30 innings of scoreless ball mark. You're getting close to that if you haven't already. But I think this is a good opportunity for them to, rebound. Off day, finally. They haven't an off day, I feel like, in 3 or 4 weeks. And now it's the perfect time for it. I think we're going to look back at the series in September and say, when they're, half game out of the playoffs or something, they're going to say, man, that was a missed opportunity. But right now, looking on tonight, that was a missed opportunity because Brewers lost yesterday. Brewers had 2 games yesterday, lost 1 to the Mets. And now you're 5 games out. You're still tied for the playoff spot, although the Padres do have that spot over the Cardinals because they have a marginally higher winning percentage. But, yeah, right now I think you just got to shrug it off and keep on going. A lot of ball to play, off day today. They're thankful for that. They took 2 out of 4 from the Cubs last week, and hopefully they can take 2 out of 3 this week.
Yeah, it's so much that literally happens within the times that we record this. We recorded episode 3 right after game 2 of the home series against the Cubs, and then they ended up dropping those 2 games and then go to Cleveland and sweep. And then this happens. And so, I agree with you. This off day finally is needed for this team. And I want to kind of just talk to you about, I've been backing this offense all year long. We've seen the glimpses of how good this team really can be. We saw that against Cleveland. We saw the moments where this team was, firing all cylinders. And I think it's time to, I'm going to continue backing this offense, but it's time to also ask questions now. But there's also a heck of things a lot going on, Talked about Jordan Walker still out. Contreras and Arenado have been, battling day to day with injuries, and so have I think Ivan Herrera has kind of been out as well. What are you saying from this offense that allowed them to not score a single run against Pittsburgh, but as well, what do you think are maybe some of the key problems? I think watching the Pirates series, situational hitting is struggling for this team right now. Not being able to get a bunt to drive guys in that are on third base, or a fly out to drive guys in that are in third base when it's a simple run that is needed. This team has the opportunities to be good really at offense, but they have not consistently found the collections to do it. What are your takeaways from the offense currently right now?
It's only 3 games, so I'm not going to pull numbers left and right or anything. I will say, they were 2 for 23 and in scoring position. Of course, and Monday's game, they didn't get a runner at second base. I mean, the Pirates have been known for their pitching. I mean, if they're known for anything aside from being a bad baseball team, they're known for having good pitching.
Yeah.
They've obviously they traded so many wonderful stars away. But Mitch Keller, Paul Skeens, that's a really good 1-2 punch. So I can't really pin too much on the Cardinals right now. I think they just got outplayed.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, you lose 13-0 in 3 games. Of course, you got outplayed, but I don't think there's too much you can point to. It was just a bad series, honestly. I didn't get to watch too much of it. I was traveling, getting back home, working on some stuff for my DM obligations and whatnot, and I didn't get to watch too much series the past few days. But when I did, it was the Tuesday game. It was 2 days ago, and they had a runner on second. It was forget his name. He forgot who he was, man. I should know this, but he legged out a double, and Victor Scott couldn't drive him in. Pedro Pajes struck out. It was a hustle double too. It wasn't like he just smacked the ball in the gap. I mean, he ran for it. He had to work for that one. Try to find a thing in a minute, but man, it just not the best baseball from them. Not very good. Not good situational hitting, like you mentioned. Going to get bunts down, but I think you got to give the Pirates some credit. They just played well this week, and they're kind of on a roll right now. I think you got to you obviously Cardinals were awful this week, but you got to give the Pirates their flowers right now. They're on a kind of on a roll.
Yeah. I think one thing that I want to be critical of really quick is Pop Warner at third base. I think that he's been a great coach for this team over the years, but I've seen it a lot this year happening. It's just horrible calls at third base by our third base coach. And when those moments of there's games that it's 1-0 in the fifth, 1-0 in the sixth, and we have our opportunity to tie the game and build some momentum late in games. But our runner gets called out at home because our third base coach told him to go. I think that's something I want to be really critical about. Just really quickly, I think it's something that Marmol has to sit down with this staff and talk about. That those moments matter. We've seen these games a lot this year for this team where it's 1-0 late in the game. We had the opportunity and then we don't collectively finish strong enough. Whether it's situational awareness, base running awareness, and I think that's something that really needs to be talked about moving forward with this team. Moving forward, Russ, where do you stand with Erick, Fedde, and Miles Mikolas? I think Fedde has been a really heart attack for this team, and fans this entire year. For me personally, I'm not gonna put too much of the blame that he had in Game 2 on him. It was 1-0 in the fifth, 1 on the sixth at that point. I can't remember exact inning, and he gives up I think like 6 or 7 runs, and the game is kind of out of there. But he gave the offense opportunities to score. I know he gave up a homer in the first inning, which kind of put a divot in his momentum. But after that homer in the first inning, he was delivering, and up until that 6th or 7th inning, he was driving through. So where do you sit with Fedde and Miles Mikolas? Do you think what do you do with them? Even if you feel like it's time to move on with them, can you shop them? What's the move for Fedde and Mikolas for this team? Do you think you just sit their contracts out? What's the move for you in your opinion?
Well, first of all, I was going to say that it was Jose Fermin who legged up that double. I'm sure he was recently called up. But yeah, it's a good question. I think either one are trade options. I think you'd want to keep Fedde, as I think he's got more upside. Obviously, he's been here for a long. He's been in the majors for a while. But I think he's got more to offer. Miles Mikolas, he's been great. At times throughout his career with the Cardinals. But he's also been really bad at times. And I really respect guys who can go to Japan, come back, reinvent themselves in a way. And it's what he's done. But I aside from his mustache and his hair, he doesn't have a lot. He doesn't have a lot to offer right now. So if you can find a way to send him somewhere, I think you kind of have to. I think Fedde is going to be the more sought pitcher at the deadline, of the two. I think you kind of have to move one of them, but both is kind of out of the question. I think I know fans really don't like Fedde. I don't mind him as much as most fans. I don't think. Maybe it's because I'm not too familiar with his numbers or anything. But whenever I watch him pitch, it's not bad. It's a good middle back rotation kind of guy. I remember against the Nationals did really, really well 2 months ago now. outstanding. And, whenever I see him, he seems to do well. But it's probably time to move away from one of those guys, if not both, of the offseason.
Yeah, Fedde's 32 and Mikolas is 36, so it's a weird proportion for the Cardinals. I think the more available option to get something better will probably be getting rid of Fedde, but then at the same time, like you just talked about, Fedde has a little bit more to offer. They both struggled this year tremendously, but I think that a little bit more upside in terms of just age and experience. Fedde kind of singles that out in terms of Mikolas. But it's a difficult time for both players. I think that Fedde has gotten a little bit more hate that I would personally say I would give to him as well. Obviously, it's not been good, especially over the last 7 games. But I still think there's an ability to put him in situations that he can compete and be successful. Like, again, game 2 against that Pirates series, it was 1-0 in the 5th. The offense just simply was not producing, and that's how the whole series went for them. But there were opportunities to give, Fedde a little bit of freeway, to relax his shoulders and relax his mind going into those later innings. And he wasn't given that opportunity to be helped by his offense. So I'm not going to put too much of the blame on him. Fedde has the candy ability to, when things go wrong, he really, really struggles. So that's something that needs to be talked about. He needs to sit down, watch some film, understand what's going on around him when those moments happen. But it's a difficult time for both of those two pitchers. And we'll see what the Cardinals front office do, if anything, within those moves. I'd be surprised if they make a move, and I would be surprised if they don't at the same time. So I think that the front office has a little bit of shoulders on them moving forward. But Russ, Chicago now, tomorrow, 1:20 p.m., What do the Cardinals have to do to stay competitive, to find the momentum back within the entire landscape? When the offense struggles like they did against the Pirates, it binds to the entire franchise. It doesn't just go to the hitting, but it now follows the confidence of how you play on defense. It follows the confidence of the pitching rotation. Mm-hmm. Cubs coming up, going to Wrigley Field. What does this team have to do to find some competitiveness and to get back that energy and the notion that they can compete with any team in baseball?
Well, they toppled the Cubs the first 2 games, but just put the ball to the wall. We saw 4 2-run homers, I think, in game 1. Hit them a couple more homers in the next game in a much closer contest, and then just sort of got silenced in those last 2 games. The good news is you're not facing Shota Imanaga. He pitched last night, I think, for them. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to see him this weekend. But it's just finding your identity again, getting back to your game. I think there's going to be a huge sigh of relief when they finally score a run this weekend. I don't imagine they're going to go 6 straight games without scoring a run. That would be probably pretty historic. So I think they just got to rebound. They need to baseball, short-term memory kind of sport. You just got to move on. Get back to your game. I look for Gorman to sort of keep going this week. He's had a couple good games past couple weeks. I'll look for him to continue that, especially in Wrigley. I would say a pretty decently hitter-friendly ballpark with the wind and whatnot. Sorry, I'm lagging like crazy. But yeah, I look for Gorman this weekend. Donnie's got to get back to his game. Burleson's really solid. Sorry, Wi-Fi is horrific. But I look for those big name guys that need to get going again. Contreras, I'm not sure if he's gonna. You mentioned him with some issues in the IL, but if he does play the series, which I imagine he would, I don't know his status, but if he does play, I look for him to really get going against his former team as well.
Yeah, this is the time where you don't want to sink to rock bottom. This Pirate series was, basically the worst series of the year so far for the Cardinals. And this is a time where, in my opinion, Marmole's managerial abilities are going to be put to the test. How do you sit down with your team now after the 3-game skid that they just showed and, build the confidence and build the momentum back into this team that they need? That clip's been going around. I don't know if you've seen it with John Groove with the team in the locker room and basically telling them that, you don't want to dream, you want to be a nightmare. And so this team has the ability to do so, but can they do it? And, this is the moment. This is, it feels like in a way the season's built around what's going to happen over the next couple games for this St. Louis Cardinals team. And, I feel like a lot of fans have quickly written them off after what they just, displayed against Pittsburgh, but you can't do that, and with one thing that, I believe wholeheartedly this team has shown is fight this year. The games against Cleveland where, game 2, they were down in the 7th inning and they came back and won that game. This team has shown fight. This franchise has shown they have the ability to win games against no matter who it is. They beat the Dodgers. They beat teams that they, most people will write them off with, but they haven't gone down. So I'm looking forward to see how this team competes against Chicago Cubs. It's going to be a make or break time for this team, whether or not they want to compete for the playoffs, whether or not they're going to tank. In my opinion, it shows right here tomorrow against the Cubs in Wrigley Field.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really big series. I mentioned last week for the Cubs that it's a really good time to rebound, and I think it starts the same thing tomorrow. It's a really good chance for them to rebound, get some of that energy back, get flowing again. And you're absolutely right. It's a huge series. Obviously hoping for the sweep. You within 2 games, you get back in the wild card spot. But yeah, now's the time you're going. All-Star break coming up. You need some momentum going into the All-Star break, coming out of it. Because like last year, they came out and they faltered, and then they never recovered. So now it's time to rebound from this and keep going. And you're right, absolutely make that push for the All-Star break.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to hold everyone too long today. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Russ, you got anything else you want to talk about?
Well, All-Star ballot, everything like that. Pretty sure it's done. Burley wasn't on there. That's a conversation another day, but I think next year Burley's got I would bet on him to be an All-Star at some point.
Yeah, me too, man. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're new, please subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you guys for getting us over 200 subscribers. It means the world to me. Appreciate you guys for allowing us to keep growing, have these conversations. We're enjoying the heck out of Cardinals talk so far. So see you next week. Hopefully soon we're going to start integrating some guests on the show to come on and just chat with us a little bit more, guys that work within the Cardinals organization a little bit stronger than we do. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Take care. All bless. Go Cards, y'all.